When did conversation become so dangerous? We're living in a time where people are afraid to speak, not because they have nothing to say, but because they are afraid of what will happen if they say it. Afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being ridiculed, being attacked online, being labeled, being canceled, afraid of being vulnerable in a world that doesn't always handle vulnerability with care. And the hard truth is, a lot of people are not silent because they have no opinion. They are silent because the cost of speaking feels too high. This is your host, Jaynee Sasso, and this is the first episode of Hard Truth, Real Talk for Real Growth. And today we are talking about why are we afraid to talk? We are going to look at the climate of fear, cancel culture, outrage culture, bullies online and offline, the fear that our voice does not matter, and the spiritual weight of our words. So sit back, get your journal, get your pen, and let us get ready to discuss the hard truth. All right, folks, let's get down to it. I want to start with talking about the climate of fear. Fear. The world is such a different place than when many of us grew up. I personally remember being in the debate team and actually enjoying going back and forth with opposing ideas and thoughts and beliefs. I remember sitting in class, in social studies class, and looking at different newspaper articles, comparing the author's perspectives and why they might have a certain bias or tilt to their writing. Just looking at two different perspectives and viewpoints and two different sides of the aisle. It could be politically, some people more conservative, more liberal, progressive, whatever labels you want to give it. And we would sit there with those ideas long enough to discuss them. It was a competition. We got excited by seeing things from a different point of view so that we could be better prepared for the debate. And not only that, we would be better prepared to understand what we believe in. Sometimes we were actually called on to argue the side that we didn't actually agree with. And so it expanded the mind. It expanded your thought. So it was just understood growing up and during that time that opposing ideas could come to the same table. You didn't have to agree with somebody in order to hear them. We were trained to come to the table with open mind and reason. And so you didn't have to validate a person's whole worldview in order to let them speak. But today, whether we're online or offline, the environment, I'm sure you would agree, has become hostile. People do not just disagree anymore, right? There's mocking, there's insults, there's attacks, there's screenshots, exposés, and labels and shame. So instead of asking, why do you see it that way? We are now saying, how dare you see it that way? Instead of conversation, we have reaction. Instead of listening, we have labeling. And instead of understanding, we have assumptions. And I want to be clear, I am leaving the comments section open because this podcast is not about creating a space where everybody has to agree with me, but it's about building a community of people who can come back to the table and have a real conversation. I actually enjoy talking to people with opposing ideas. It helps me to better understand the world that I live in. It helps me to better understand why certain societal norms or behaviors are appearing before me. You don't have to have your ideas validated to be respected. And you do not have to agree with me for us to have a meaningful exchange. I think it's very important. So, we're going to talk about the difference between passion or validation. Which one is your driving force when you come to the table for a conversation? Now, I don't tend to get involved in a lot of debates online because honestly, a lot of it is a waste of time. I'm not going to argue about gossip, essentially, and what an influencer did or what they may have said or didn't say, a pastor, a celebrity, even trending topics, or every little thing that kind of shows up on my timeline. There's plenty times when I just scroll on by because it's really not worth the energy to argue about it. I'm just too busy. And so as I get older, I realize I don't have the same energy to fuss about things like that really don't matter. When you're younger, you are chomping at the bit and ready to take on the world. But when you get older, you get a little wiser, right? And you realize you have to conserve your energy and you have to conserve your focus and you have to make an investment in things that really matter. So I like to think one of the first things we have to ask is this: is this conversation actually important? Is this something substantial here? Is this something that impacts real life, real people, families, communities, faith, truth, wisdom, justice, or healing? Is there something significant here? Because if you're going to go to blows with someone, and I'm not talking about physically, although unfortunately today some people have gone to that extreme, but if you're going to go to blows and you're going to spend that time, that kind of energy, it needs to be about something that has weight. Okay. So here's my challenge to you. When you're coming to the debate table, to the table of conversation, and you're ready to go, are you really passionate about what you believe? Or are you fighting because you need validation? Because there's a big difference. You see, when you're truly passionate about truth, you don't need a crowd to always clap for you. Matter of fact, when you embrace truth, you better believe that you probably won't get much of applause, right? And you better believe that you're not necessarily going to get somebody to tell you, you know what, you're right. I support you. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise or oppose you. No, there's many times that I have to stand on what I believe, regardless if I have that support or not. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't have anybody in my sphere of influence of the world that supports me, but I am confident enough in what I believe to be able to stand independently if that's what's called for. And so sometimes what we call passion is really a hunger for validation. I mean, it's just blatantly in our faces today. You can be passionate about something, but if your passion leads you to physical violence and to tearing down people and assassinating their character over things that you disagree with, then I'm going to have to question whether you're really passionate or if you are upset and angry because that opposing party has not accepted or validated your thoughts or your ideas or your belief. And for those of us who are people of faith, we have to be even more careful, right? Because we have to ask ourselves, am I having a thoughtful, meaningful discussion, or am I just repeating the latest gossip? Yes, yes. I think many of us can get caught up in the debate online that's really surrounding gossip. It's not anything significant, but we can go blow to blow. I mean, think of some of your favorite celebrities. Think of people in leadership in any sphere. This one slept with this one, and this one had an affair, and yada, yada, yada. And you end up finding that you are defending someone that you don't even know. And not only that, you're having fruitless conversation that leads to nowhere. You don't know these people. You probably will never meet them. So you don't really know if the information you receive is completely true, or if it's slightly being delivered to you in a biased way, especially if you don't stop to ask the question. So gossip is fruitless words. Doesn't build, doesn't heal, doesn't correct. It usually just destroys. So before you insert yourself into an argument, pause and ask, what is the root of this conversation? What is my motivation for entering this conversation? And when I was on the debate team in elementary school, we would travel a ways to go and share, bring our intellect to the table. It was a kind of a sparring of ideas. It was to challenge you. So there was a constructive reason behind why we were entering that debate. And so you want to ask yourself, am I trying to express an idea so I can be understood? Or am I trying to intimidate somebody into seeing things my way? That is a legitimate question. So let's let that marinate for just a minute. So right now, I'm going to just take a quick break and invite you to share comments. Let them be respectful, please. We're not looking for your agreement. I'm looking for you to share what you believe and to get out of your echo chamber and to really examine your own thinking. As they say, when it comes to critical thinking, you need to think about your thinking. So we're going to take a short break. I'm going to read through some of the comments and then we're going to come right back. All right, we are back. And so we're going to pick up our discussion and talk about this cancel culture. Cancel culture, from my point of view, came on the scene maybe around the time of COVID. And also around that time was the Black Lives Matter protest. Those were the two significant events that I think were kind of the catalyst to what we now call cancel culture, which has actually transitioned and escalated to even something worse. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But the cancel culture, it helped to fuel and create this climate of fear. And so while you're listening to this portion of the program, think about the question, am I passionate about truth or am I fighting for validation, as you kind of examine your own interactions with people during that COVID time, during that Black Lives Matter time, during any real big controversial event that happened across society, right? So you want to really think about that as you are examining your approach and seeing if in fact you had the right motivation, because your motivation matters. When I enter into conversation with people, that's really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people that understand that we may not arrive at a total conclusion or agreement after our discussion, but that's not really their purpose. Their purpose isn't they want someone to just say, yes, that you're absolutely right. I'm looking for someone that just enjoys the interaction, because that's just part of having good conversation. So when we talk about cancel culture, we also have to we have to recognize that the climate of fear has also been created. And how much of this climate of fear and this cancel culture is driven by the fact that we no longer know how to have meaningful debate. Cancel culture, essentially, it says if you say something that goes against the accepted thought of the moment, You can be exposed, you can be shamed, disregarded. And I believe it really found its power online, right? Because online, you can screenshot somebody, you can shame somebody, you can get a crowd to join in with you. And before that person even has a chance to explain, you can get that crowd to come and pounce on them. In offline, it's harder to cancel somebody in the same way, right? Because you can't run down to the butcher shop and say, "Hey, Mr. Butcher, don't sell that person any meat for the rest of their lives because they're a horrible person and they're not worthy." You can't do that and go to the librarian, right? You can't go down to the grocery store and have them banned. And you just don't have the ability to go to every public space and tell every single person not to deal with that person because you decided that they are no longer worthy. But online, oh, it can happen quickly. And when people see that enough times, they really start measuring every word before they speak. Now, for the people that are doing the bullying, who are the intimidating ones, and it's usually the loudest voices in the room. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the people that talk the loudest. They usually have the weakest argument. There's a principle that I learned a long time ago, and it's one of the reasons why people listen to me when I'm in spaces. It's because I don't do a lot of yapping. I believe in letting my action and my progress speak for me. Let my work speak for me. Let my behavior speak for me. And when I do get an opportunity to speak, because I don't do it often, people are curious as to what I'm saying. And it really puts me in a power position because I have the ability to now have all eyes on me, all ears are open, and I have their absolute attention, which means that unlike somebody that's yelling and screaming, and the person really that you're yelling and screaming about, or two, is not really paying you any attention, by the way. They can't even understand because you're so emotional, that you're probably not even making sense to them or anybody else. So they're not really listening to you. But when you are slow, steady, and confident, and you truly believe in what you're saying, and you can say it with such calmness and sureness, oh, people listen, and they usually hear a lot more of what you're saying than when you're yelling. So don't take this as I don't believe in accountability or correction, because I do. I just believe that we have to be mindful of how we handle each other. Some people should be challenged when they say something harmful or careless or just completely out of order. But there's a way to do it, right? So correction is healthy. Accountability is necessary, but destruction of that person should not be the first response to their imperfection. Some people don't always have the perfect words, right? Some people are still growing. I can look at my children. When my son and my daughter were little, my son always had a great grasp on the English language and also other languages. I put him in classes early, toddlers, infant stages. And so by the time he was 2, he could put a bunch of congruent sentences together. I have it on video because he used to astound me, his ability to speak so well. And because of that, and he had the confidence, and people paid attention to him, so he knew that he could communicate a thought and an idea. He would speak on behalf of his sister, who was not able to speak in congruent, fluent English at 2 years old, right? And we actually had to stop him because it was stunting her growth. And we had to give her a chance to learn. And so a person just may not have all the vocabulary, but that doesn't mean we should rob them of the opportunity to learn and grow, especially from us who may not agree, right? We can bring a newer perspective, a broader perspective to the table. It's the willingness to extend grace to people, because you recognize that we're all in a different level of our growth and development. And sometimes we don't yet have the language to communicate what we really mean. I mean, we got people graduating from high school that can't read and write. So, how in the world would we expect a person that is coming from our educational system to be able to have the language or the vocabulary to truly express what they really mean? They just may not have the words. So, today, if you say one wrong word, you can make people feel like their entire character is on trial. And that's dangerous because it doesn't always produce growth. Sometimes it really just produces silence. And do we really want people to be silent? Hmm. Only if you are interested in just being having your ideas and thoughts and beliefs validated. Then you want that person to shut up unless they agree with you, right? So think about your own conversations that you've had with the individuals in your sphere of influence. And think about how you've engaged with them over the last 5, 10, 15 years when you've had disagreements. And examine how you handled that situation. Don't shy away from it. Don't make excuses for bad behavior. Just embrace it. Say, I didn't handle that quite right. I was upset. They didn't see things my way, and I didn't take it so well. That's okay. As they say, the first step to changing is to acknowledge you have a problem. So we're going to take a short break, and we're going to talk about why it is that we want people to be silent, and why is it that we misunderstand them and we don't extend people grace anymore. We'll talk about it. Be right back. All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. So when I look back over my little bit of time I've been here on this planet here, Earth, what I notice from when I was growing up is we don't know people anymore. We don't know each other. And that's the reason why it's so easy for us to dismiss people and disregard people, especially when they don't agree with us. It's because we don't really know each other, and therefore we don't really know the heart or the character of an individual. So when we interact with a post, a clip, a caption, a comment, different groups of people, we don't know their heart because we don't know them. We don't know their history. We don't know their character. We don't know whether they are trying to harm somebody or whether they simply do not know how to say something better yet, right? We just don't know each other because we don't spend time with people anymore. The internet, although it has expanded our capacity to communicate, it has in many ways caused us to live in greater isolation than ever before. And so when you keep people separated, we can't discern who a person really is outside of their physical characteristics. And we all know that your physical characteristics is not the totality of your being, right? It's really what is in your heart. It's really what is in what are you saying and what are you thinking when nobody's watching, right? That's really the essence of a person. So as I had mentioned before, my daughter would try to talk, and my son, who had a better grasp on the English language at that age, would try to talk for her. But even though my daughter's words were jumbled, because I spent so much time with her, I knew the meaning behind her jumbled words. I knew it, even though she didn't say it exactly or the way that I would like, or perfectly, or easiest way for me to understand. I spent enough time with her that I understood how she thought, what her behaviors were, what her patterns were, And that helped me to decipher what she was trying to communicate. And because when you spend time with people, you understand their heart before they actually have the perfect language to communicate their heart. But we don't spend that kind of time with people anymore, right? So we hear one sentence and we decide that we know the whole person. And even when correction is needed, how we correct matters. I don't make it a habit of correcting my husband in front of a room full of people. If I have something to say, I wait until we get in the car, at home, in a private space where I can speak with care and consideration. Why? Because there's a way to handle people that you claim to love. Now, you can look back over the last 5, 10, 15 years and seeing how you handled the people that you claim to love. There is an etiquette, a care, of handling of one another that I believe we've forgotten that. And this is what is fueling this cancel culture is we punish people publicly. And in a lot of ways, I think because of what I like to call ratchet TV, I think which began at Jerry Springer and all of the other talk shows, Ricky Lake and all the other ones. If you grew up in the '90s, in the '80s, um, we grew up focusing on people fighting and tearing each other down and exposing each other. And unfortunately, although I was right there with Donahue and Ricky Lake and Sally Jesse Raphael and all of the others, Montel Williams show, I have to say that that was a seed that was being planted in the hearts and minds and spirits of people. Um, it definitely is demonic activity at work. And the reason that I say that is because it didn't stay at that level. It grew, right? Because what benefit do we really gain by tearing a person apart? What do we really benefit by shaming someone and trying to convince them to accept that they are the father? Right? Maury Povich. And so I'm not talking about people that have gross behavior, things that obviously as a society we should just totally shun, and most people would, unless you have some mental health challenges. And so I'm not talking about harming people. I'm talking about people in our families, in our churches, in our workplaces, in our communities who, although may have imperfect words, still deserve human dignity. But I believe that that seed of cancel culture that seed was planted back when we were embracing what I would call the early days of reality TV. Those talk shows, even though some of them arguably were staged, obviously, it was still the setup for us to create a culture of exposure. And now we have cancel culture, and it is transitioned to what I call the outrage culture. So we're going to take a quick break. Put your thoughts in the comments. Keep it respectful, keep it classy, because we're here to have conversation, not tear each other apart. And so some of you in the comments are going to not agree with each other or with me. But we'll be right back, and we're going to talk about the transition between the cancel culture, the outrage culture, and then there's another level that we've escalated to as a society. And we'll talk about that. All right, be back. All right, let's get back in it. Well. Hopefully you got something to drink. took a little potty break, got something to snack on. Maybe you're driving. You've had a minute to think about what we've already discussed because this is a lot. It's pretty deep when you think about it, right? Which is exciting because this is what the world needs. We need to really examine what we're doing on this planet called Earth. So let's talk about the voice. When people are fearful, when they're ashamed, when they feel like they may be canceled for not saying the exact right thing, they can start to believe that their voice doesn't matter. And we can make people believe this too, right? We have a role to play in how we either embrace or reject a person's thoughts and ideas. So some people are afraid of being attacked, some are afraid of being ignored. And then they start to think, and this might even describe yourself. Who am I to say something? Right? We have a lot of that. You don't have a right to speak because you're not X, Y, and Z. And my opinion doesn't matter. Nobody's going to listen to me. All the thoughts that go into your mind, not having a big platform. I'm not educated enough. I don't know enough, right? Some people, that's another big one. You're not educated enough to talk about this. Just another way of shutting someone down. But your voice does matter. And it's important that you remind yourself of that when you find these questions and these thoughts going around in your head. Because your voice is the one way that people come to know who you are. And yes, we can see a person's physical appearance, their hair, their eyes, their height, their style. But to know the soul and spirit of a person, you have to hear their words because words reveal thoughts and thoughts reveal identity and identity matters. And what I have come to realize about the cancel culture, which has escalated into the outrage culture, is that it's not just about disagreement, it is about identity. It's about trying to put a label on someone before they've had a chance to speak for themselves, to really have an opportunity to share and express who they really are. It does not allow a person to complete a thought, to complete an idea, right? If you just shut someone down, they don't even have a chance and you take their authority away of being able to speak, then they don't get that opportunity to challenge even what you are professing to say about them or how you are going attempting to label them. And so it's important that we realize that everybody's voice has a different frequency. Everybody's voice has a different frequency. And that frequency has the ability to unlock something in somebody else. So that means that every human voice is important, even the negative voices. Right? I learned that about mentorship. I used to think that mentorship was all about finding someone who's doing it right and just focus on them. But I came to realize that mentorship is also finding somebody who failed at it and learning from their errors and their mistakes so that you don't repeat them, right? So there's a reframing of what that can take place. Now, may sound deep for some of you, but this podcast is not about staying on the surface because we're going deep. And the reason why I say that everybody's voice has a different frequency is because I know this because my giftings are in my voice. I'm a prophet, I'm a coach, I'm a teacher. I'm an advisor. I provide guidance and education to people. And so whether I've been on the radio, whether I've done private coaching, whether I've teaching students, I mean, even homeschooling my own children, people have often said to me, Jaynee, I can hear your voice when you are not here. I know exactly, I can just hear, I know exactly what you're going to say, and I can hear it. And so that means the voice carries something. It left an imprint, it gave instruction, it corrected, it encouraged, it unlocked something. And I think we take that for granted. And maybe your gift is not in your voice. Maybe your gift is in your hands. Maybe it's in how you see. Maybe it's how you serve. We all carry something different, but we also have a sphere of influence. And if we don't allow people's voice to be heard, then we may be doing a disservice not only to ourselves who may need to hear opposing point of view, but to someone else who may not even have the breadth or depth of knowledge that you even have, right? You may be robbing someone else of that key word or phrase that just unlocks their brain and says, huh, I need to I need to think about that differently. I mean, we call it aha moments. How many of you go to, different inspirational, think of Tony Robbins. I've never been to a Tony Robbins event, but I know people that have. It unlocks something. I mean, even us people of faith, when we go and hear a minister preach, it unlocks something in us, right? So I believe that out of the heart, the mouth speaks, and that is the revealer of who you really are. So, my question to you is, what is the spirit behind your voice? Hmm. What is the spirit behind your voice? Because there's a lot of damage being done when we have a culture that trains people to be silent and only certain voices are allowed to speak. Because today we've got a real big problem, folks, because there's a lot of loud voices speaking, but they are not speaking to bring life. They are speaking and it's bringing about death. So the word of God, the Bible says, you will know a tree by its fruit. Here's a little quick test for you. Even if you're a non believer, what is the impact of your words? The impact of your voice? Are you using it to intimidate people, shut people down? Or are you bringing to someone information that is opening up their mind and causing them to be free to speak and to learn and to share? Because when people are intimidated out of using their voice, something assigned to come through them may never be released. And for those of us who are people of faith, we know words are not words. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. We say it all the time. So we have to pay attention to what spirit is operating behind our speech. I talked about motivation earlier. What's motivating you to enter a discussion? What is motivating you? Is it passion or is it the need to be validated because you're not really confident in your argument? See, I'm confident in my arguments, so I don't really have to yell and scream and jump up and down. Matter of fact, if you are not mature enough to have a conversation, I am so strong in my belief that I don't even have to try to waste my time trying to convince you that I'm right because it's not worth my effort. You're not mature enough to handle the type of conversation and dialogue that I'm interested in because I'm actually interested in why you think the way you think. Anybody that knows me, I love human psychology. Love it. I watch all of those shows because I am fascinated by the human mind. My favorite project in my psychology class, my senior year, I believe, in high school, was I chose to do a paper called Nature versus Nurture because I wanted to know why serial killers act the way they act? Where did that rage, where did that anger, where did that lack of empathy and compassion, where did that start? Were they born like that, or was it in the womb? What happened to them to pervert their way of thinking? I've always been fascinated. So when I enter a conversation, I'm not so interested in convincing you that I'm right and you're wrong. I'm really trying to better understand what makes you tick, understand why you're at the point in your life where you're at. And if by some stroke of the imagination you take away from our conversation a nugget or an insight that helps to get you on your way down the path called life, then hey, I'm all for it. But when we try to use outrage to shut people up and to intimidate them, that's producing fear. And for those of us that are in faith, we know that fear is not of the Lord, right? God does not give us the spirit of fear, but of love and a sound mind. Because fear is designed to bring instability. Because fear causes you to sway in your emotions. And it causes you to respond very emotionally. So when people use outrage, the goal and the fruit of it is to blatantly and openly and loudly make it known that a person's voice is not welcome here. And what does that do to that individual and then ultimately society as a whole? It steals ideas and thoughts. It kills people's abilities to advance. And sometimes, just sometimes, people's lives are completely destroyed. And people of faith out there, we know what spirit comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So I want to challenge you, everyone, to figure out what side are you on? Are you in the growth and development side? Or are you in the steal, kill, and destroy side? Because a lot of us are not really paying attention to our words. So as I mentioned before, cancel culture, I believe, has gone to another extreme, and that's the outrage culture. So let's talk about that a little bit. How do we get to our outrage culture? And we're actually on the precipice of escalating past the outrage culture. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So cancel culture, like I said, I believe it started back in the talk show days. That was the ratchet TV of yesteryears, right? The talk shows, the you're not the father, and this one sleeping with that one, and all of that kind of stuff, right? That was the beginning. That was the introduction, and nobody said anything. We just, at a society, we just let it slide. It's entertainment. It's harmless, right? I was probably one right there saying it or believing it or thinking it. But now I realize we made a terrible mistake. We made a terrible mistake as a society. So cancel culture says, I ignore you, I disregard you, I erase you. And that took place, that really became to the forefront during COVID and the whole Black Lives Matter outrage protests. That's actually, to me, COVID and the Black Lives Matter protests, that's when that cancel culture switched to the outrage culture. That was the early seeds that were being planted. hmm Yeah, some of you not going to agree with this. You can, I know you probably clutching your pearls and your head is turning back, but you'll be all right. Take a moment, pause, and get your head back on straight. What's the difference between a cancel culture and an outrage culture? Why do I say it flipped? Because outrage culture says, I am so upset by what you believe that I cannot even tolerate your voice. So, one, we tried to make the person disappear. But that has limitations, right? Because we've watched people be canceled and then they come back, right? They as what we say, they reinvent themselves, right? So cancel culture is not necessarily permanent. If someone does enough bowing and apologizing, the leaders of the cancel culture, the self-designated leaders of cancel culture, will graciously allow them to come back into the fold, right? But outrage is much more permanent, right? Because its goal is to shut you up completely, because it's saying your voice doesn't even have a right to exist. And that's powerful. And it's also a dangerous message to release into the atmosphere. And so when outrage culture goes unchecked, it doesn't stay contained. It grows. It shows up online. It shows up offline. That's also the difference between outrage culture and cancel culture. Outrage culture can now infect our offline lives. Why? It shows up in families. It shows up in churches. It shows up in workplaces. It shows up in communities. And that's why silence has a cost. Because as you can see, it starts as a seed and then it grows and it grows because no one stops it, no one checks it. And when we stay silent, we allow unhealthy behavior to keep growing. We allow intimidation to become normal. So cancel culture has become normal. So much, so much so, anytime a label or a word or language is given to a thought of an idea, it's normal. And so what we allow people to believe is that the loudest voices in the room is the voice that gets to control the room. And that's not maturity. That's not wisdom. That's not truth. That's control. And you being in control doesn't mean that you have the truth, that you possess the truth, right? So this is where we have to ask ourselves, where have I allowed fear to silence me? Where have I allowed intimidation to shape what I say or do not say? And where have I become part of the intimidation without realizing it? And why some of us have become a part of the intimidation without realizing it? Because of the climate of fear. Outrage and cancel culture's goal is to intimidate you and to bully you into submission. I think I remember some of the Black Lives Matters protesters confronting people in public and demanding that they bow down to this ideology of Black Lives Matter. Hmm. See, I understood what the Black Lives Matter and the COVID events, what that was really about. It started off harmless. It was to bring awareness, right? It always starts with, we just want people to be aware. But what happens when people reject your ideas and your thoughts? How are you going to take it? What is your response? Well, the response is when the change happened, when the shift happened, because there was a different spirit in operation. That's why if you are a believer, you do not want to get behind a movement without testing the spirit, because it sounds wonderful on the front end. Sounds wonderful. Remember, the enemy paints himself as an angel of light. He's not going to come out and boldly say, we're going to begin the outrage culture and verbally and physically assault people if they don't bow down to what we believe. He doesn't do that. He starts off with an innocent idea. Read Genesis. The only thing Eve was asked was, is that really what God said? Very innocent question. But it was enough of a seed planted to get her to move into doubting what she heard. That's another thing. Many of us of faith, excuse me, are being drawn into things because we doubt what we heard the first time. Hmm. Yeah. Clutch your pearls and turn and fix your head back on straight because I know that twisted your head back. So we're going to take a little break, take a breath, stretch a little bit, turn our head back on straight because I know, like I said, some of you may have your head spinning right now because you never thought about it that way. And that's okay. That's okay because as I've been talking about, you've got to give people the space to grow and learn. And so when we come back, we're going to talk about bullies, online bullies, offline bullies, and the spirit behind trying to intimidate people into silence. What is that all about? Right? So let's take a short break and we'll be right back. All right, let's get back into our discussion because we're going to be wrapping it up soon. Hopefully you've been enjoying the discussion. It's challenge your thinking. It's really about challenging you. It's not anything more than getting you to think a little deeper because that's one of our problems today in society. Sound bites and clips and reels and stories and comments and all captions and all of that doesn't give us really an opportunity to do any deep thinking. So let's talk about bullies. When I was growing up, there were always bullies in a class. It was to be expected. I never went to a class that there wasn't a person, an individual there that was the bully. But now it seems like this behavior of the bully has replicated itself. Although, on one hand, we have schools and parent associations saying zero tolerance for bullies. Many people have embraced bullying each other into silence. And so bullies don't only exist online, I mean, offline, they also exist online. You can be a bully in your home, in your church, in your family, in your business, in your workplace, and in your community. And social media, all it did was give us a bully a bigger stage, right? Because, like I said, back in the day, the bully was in the classroom, on the playground. Once you went home, the bully wasn't to be found until you went back to the school and to the playground. But today we are being bullied from all different directions. And most of the time, the bullying comes from the fight for control and for power, right? Just like on the playground, control, power. I want everybody to look at me. I want everybody to see me. And I want everybody to do what I tell them to do. Bully. So, one cure for some of this mess is that we stop spending so much time online and get in front of real people because it's real easy to cancel people, bully people, avoid real conversation and heart to heart dialogue behind a screen. And we even have terminology for that now, right? Keyboard warriors and all that kind of stuff. And it's because we don't really know people anymore. So we feel it an obligation in a sense to get people straight, right? But the problem is we're not measuring the weight of our words and we're not discerning the heart, but behind the words of the people online. We only see fragments of them online. We make assumptions. Oh, they're stuck up. Oh, they're self righteous. You have no idea. And what the outrage culture has done is it's stolen the voices of many people because it doesn't give people a chance to really be heard. It gives us a preview, a clip, a comment, a sentence, and then it tells us to judge the whole person from that one moment. But see, if you knew that person, like I did my daughter, when she couldn't put a full sentence together and she jumbled her words, I knew my child. I knew what she liked to eat. So if she grunted and pointed at something to eat, I knew she wanted that. She said, yum, yum. I knew she liked that. More, more. Sometimes you didn't say more, 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 more. Can't even remember how she used to say it. But I understood the heart behind her words. So let me give you another example of correction without outrage. When I was in high school, I went to a boarding school. There were about 100 students total. A handful of us, maybe five, I think, were Black students. So we were definitely in the minority. I remember being called the N word. I remember messages being even left in my mailbox. I remember being around people who had never really seen a Black person in real life before. Some of them only had seen a Black person if one of us crossed their TV screen. And there was a young man at our school that was a friend of us, and we hung out with him. He was from Texas. And one day we were all sitting outside, a beautiful day, just talking and hanging out. And he let a derogatory phrase roll off of his tongue. Whew. It was offensive, very offensive. And me and my friends looked at him and said, "You cannot say that. What did you just say? Do you even realize what you just said?" Now, some people may have felt we would have been justified in going into outrage. Some people would have felt that we, would have been justified in punching them in the face. And back then, I was more likely to do that. The Lord had not quite yet worked on me to keep me from doing that. As the Holy Spirit is known as to be the great restrainer for those of us who are in faith. And so I'm being honest. Back then, I was more militant. I was young. So I had plenty of energy to fight, way more than I have now. So now I rely on the old noodle to help me to deal with situations and circumstances. So we didn't respond in outrage. And the reason we didn't was because we knew him. We knew his heart. We had spent time with him. We laughed with him. We talked with him. And he never treated us with any type of hatred or anything. And so what came out of his mouth was wrong, but we understood that he had grown up hearing that kind of language. And he was receptive of our correction because of the way that we corrected him. So instead of outrage, we educated him. We told him why what he said was offensive and inappropriate. And we even warned him that if he ever said that outside this circle of friends, he might lose his life. So we were very honest and truthful that the grace we extend to him within our friend group was not going to be extended to him when he walked outside this friend group and he walked into the wrong group of people. Somebody would not be so gracious. And he received it, he apologized, and I believe he learned something that day. I believe he learned that he needs to question what he was being taught. And that's the part we're missing today. We don't realize that many of us are influenced by our upbringing, by our community. And sometimes those influences are not always the best examples. And so the outrage culture makes the assumption that every person is trying to hurt another person, is trying to wound another person. When reality is that person may just be ignorant. They just may not be aware They may not have the language to communicate effectively. And so before some of you say, oh no, he was racist and da 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 da, no, he wasn't. He wasn't. I had met some racist ones on that campus, and he wasn't one of them. He didn't even associate with them. Matter of fact, they didn't want to associate with him because he associated with us. And most racists, from what I've observed, are really blatant about what they stand for. Yeah, you can tell the difference. Their energy is totally different. And I can speak to that because I've been in those environments where somebody just never, I had never talked to them, never even probably crossed their path before. And I would walk by them and I would feel that coldness and that hatred just spewing out of them. So there's a difference. There's a difference between malice and immaturity. There's a difference between someone who wants to harm you and someone who needs to be taught better. But outrage culture, it doesn't leave room for that. It doesn't consider grace. And for anybody who does not use the word grace, let me say it this way: giving people the benefit of the doubt. Give them a chance to get it right before you try to kill them with your words, with your posts, with your comments, or your assumptions. Give them a chance. Don't become a bully. Being a bully doesn't solve anything. Do you honestly believe that if you bully someone and you abuse someone, that they are actually going to be receptive of what you're saying? No, they're not. Think about your own self. When somebody yells and screams at you and tries to force you to do something or to believe something, does that make it any easier for you? Do you go walk away and say, oh, wow, I really am so glad they yelled at me and they bullied me and they abused me. I really see things their way. No, I highly doubt that that's the feeling or the thought that you walked away with, because I know it's not me. That bullying and yelling and screaming, it doesn't work for me. Matter of fact, I tune you out. I've heard nothing that you've had to say. And typically I don't even respond because it's not worthy of a response, in my opinion. It's not worthy of my energy. I'm too mature for that. So you have to be careful if you're a person of faith with being a bully, because if you are a bully, it more likely means that you are harboring some type of bitterness, hatred, resentment, and offense in your heart over something that, if we're really honest, insignificant online. Have these people you defending, you don't even know them, will never meet them, and they could really care less about you defending them. So you have to own what you do online: the posts you share, the comments you write, the things you repost, the way you participate in tearing people down. It's gossip. Sorry, not sorry. And we all are going to be held accountable for what we do to people, especially if you're a person of faith. If you're not a person of faith, you might call it karma. But the Bible clearly says we will reap what we sow. God's not going to be mocked. It's sowing and reaping. Either way, you need to sow well. You don't need to be an online bully. You don't need to be an offline bully. You don't need to intimidate people or tear them down with your speech. And you don't need to let your need for validation drive you to outrage, because that's when you get into physical violence. And on the flip side of that, if you're the one being bullied, don't let it happen. Being silent, yes, it can feel safe. It can also cost us, because it has. When we are silent, we allow harmful behavior to go unchecked. We allow intimidation to shape the atmosphere. We allow loudness to replace wisdom. So I'm not saying that every post you should just ignore. And I'm not saying that every argument you should give your energy to. What I am saying is you have to use wisdom. You have to understand your call, your purpose, where you can add value to the conversation, not to the outrage, because there is no value in outrage. Outrage leads to stealing people's opportunities, killing people with your words, and potentially destroying their lives, either by your words or even physical violence, as some people in our society today have resorted to. There are plenty of things I scroll right past because there's no fruit in me jumping into it. Not every fight is your fight. Not every battle is my battle. We have to develop wisdom to know when to speak, when to stay quiet, when to correct, when to pray, when to walk away, and when to stand firm. Some people don't want to be corrected. I learned this a long time ago. I don't generally give advice to even friends or family anymore unless I'm asked. Because unless I'm asked, I have no way of knowing if they're ready to receive. And as a person of faith, I have enough wisdom to know that I should not cast my pearls among swine. I only talk to people that I've been assigned to talk to. And for some of you, that goes right over your head because you feel like you have to say something to every single person about what they're doing right or wrong. Not so. Sometimes the seeds of your words will just fall to the ground and produce nothing because it wasn't meant for you to sow there. So here's the hard truth for today as we wrap it up. We are afraid to talk because we have created a culture where people are punished, labeled, mocked, and misunderstood before they are heard. But we cannot grow beyond conversations we are too afraid to have. So this week, I want you to ask yourself a few questions. Where have I gone silent because I was afraid? Where have I used my voice to intimidate instead of build? Where have I confused correction with destruction? Where do I need to speak with more courage? And where do I need to listen with more humility? In the next episode, we are going to continue this conversation. We are going to talk about vulnerability, the lost art of conversation, how to approach hard conversations. It's also known as conflict resolution, which is a skill, by the way. And what's the danger of shutting people down? Because even people of faith can shut people down. Even people who say they love truth can operate in the same spirit they claim to be correcting. So turn your head back on straight. Release your pearls. Straighten them out so you don't look a mess when you go outside. Calm yourself. Get a nice little glass of water and cool your nerves because you're uncomfortable. I know. And it's okay because being uncomfortable doesn't always mean something is wrong. Sometimes discomfort means growth is happening. And I hope it is. So stay faithful, stay kind, be bold and courageous until we meet again. Signing off.